Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with Morsels of the Thought number 1398. I've been back since last Wednesday and my cough hasn't gone, so something is going around that's a little stronger than usual, or at least stronger than we used to expect. We used to not expect a cold to last 20 days, Used to be 10 days. However, I'm reading today from the Book of Virtues by William J. Bennet. Excuse me. The Book of Virtues is a treasury of great moral stories, edited with commentary by William J. Bennet. So I'm starting today with page 171. On page 171, George Eliot says, "Count that day lost. We can look back on each day," says Bennet, "as being either lost or spent." Marianne Evans, better known as George Eliot from 1819 to 1880, shows us how to tell the difference and what is worth a day's expense. If you sit down at set of sun and count the acts that you have done, and counting find one self-denying deed, one word that eased the heart of him who heard, one glance most kind that fell like sunshine where it went, then you may count that day well spent. But if through all the livelong day you've cheered no heart by yea or nay, if through it all you've nothing done that you can trace that brought the sunshine to one face, no act most small that helped some soul and nothing cost, then count that day as worse than lost. That is a very good expression of how to count a day as well spent or lost. There is, I guess, a reason that we have pets and cats and dogs and animals and iguanas and pigs and snakes even. Although I don't know how to read a snake's expression, but no. Anyway, we are reading a Christian book of virtues, right? I wouldn't say it was necessarily Christian, but it was written in the United States. It was compiled in the United States in what year? Around, I would say, the 50s. Let me take a look. Simon & Schuster. Let's take a look at when this book was compiled. This one says the copyright is 1993, and it's the 36th printing. However, it also says, well, I guess it says 1993. I think that's when I got it the first time. So anyway, Aristotle on pity from the Rhetoric. Aristotle argues that pity is a kind of pain felt from a realization that a similar misfortune at any time might at any time affect us or our loved ones. The definition may seem distastefully self-centered, but one should bear in mind that in the Rhetoric, Aristotle is teaching the reader in part how to play on an audience's emotions. Now, I would like to add that Aristotle was a Greek writer from the ancient times who also wrote comedies. He wrote tragedies and comedies. His underlying observation is still worth our attention. Pity arises from some fundamental recognition that suffering is an unavoidable part of every human existence. The translation is: pity may be defined as a pain for apparent evil, destructive or painful, befalling a person who does not deserve it, when we might expect such evil to befall ourselves or some of our friends, and when, moreover, it seems near. Plainly, the man who is to pity must be such as to think himself or his friends liable to suffer from some ill, and ill of such sort as has been defined, or of a like or comparable sort. Hence pity is not felt by the utterly lost, for they think that they cannot suffer anything further, they have suffered, nor by those who think themselves supremely prosperous, rather they are insolent. For if they think that they have all goods, of course they think that they have exemption from suffering ill, this being a good. The belief is that they may possibly suffer, excuse me, the belief that they may possibly suffer is likely to be felt by those who have already suffered and escaped, by elderly persons on account of their good sense and experience, by the weak and especially by the rather timid, by the educated, for they are reasonable, by those too who have parents, children, or wives, for these are their own and are liable to the sufferings the above named, and by those who are not possessed by a courageous feeling, such as anger or boldness, for these feelings take no account of the future, and by those who are not in an insolent state of mind, as such are reckless of prospective suffering. Pity is felt by those who are in the intermediate states, and by those again who are not in great fear, for the panic stricken do not pity, because they are busied with their own feeling. Men pity, too, if they think that there are some people who may be reckoned good, for he who thinks no one good will think all worthy of evil, all people worthy of evil. And generally, a man pities when he is in a position to remember that like things have befallen himself or his friends, or to expect that they may. Again, men pity when the danger is near themselves, and they pity those like them in age, in character, in moral state, in rank, in birth, for all these examples make it more probable that the case may become their own, since here again we must take it as a general maxim that all things which we fear for ourselves we pity when they happen to others. Good morning, Gina Portorf. Good morning, Liz Rose Cantara. Good to see you. Gina, you are a great writer yourself. I read something you wrote last night on yesterday. I read it last night. You wrote yesterday on, gosh, where did you write it on? Twitter? Facebook? Hmm. Anyway, here, page 173, the ride The Ride of Colin's Graves by John Boyle O'Reilly. Here is heroic compassion. On May 16, 1874, the Mill River Dam in Hampshire County, Massachusetts, gave way, flooding some 124 acres to an average depth of 24 feet. Nearly 200 people from the villages of Williamsburg, Skinnerville, Haydenville, and Leeds perished in the disaster. This old New England ballad tells the story of Colin's Graves, who rode through the towns to warn residents of the coming danger. Liz Rose, have you ever heard of him? Here's the poem. No song of a soldier riding down to the raging fight of Winchester town, no song of a time that shook the earth with the nation's throe at a nation's birth, but the song of a brave man free from fear, as Sheridan's self or Paul Revere, who risked what they risked, free from strife and its promise of glorious pay, his life. The peaceful valley has waked and stirred, and the answering echoes of life are heard. The dew still clings to the trees and grass, and the early toilers, smiling, pass. As they glance aside at the white-walled homes, or up the valley where merrily combs the brook that sparkles in diamond rills as the sun comes over the Hampshire hills. What was it passed like an ominous breath, like a shiver or fear or a touch of death? What was it? The valley is peaceful still, and the leaves are afire on top of the hill. It was not a sound nor a thing of sense, but a pain like a pang in the short suspense that wraps the being of those who see at their feet the gulf of eternity. The air of the valley has felt the chill. The workers pause at the door of the mill. The housewife, keen to the shivering air, arrests her foot on the cottage stair, instinctive taught by the mother love, and thinks of the sleeping ones above. Why start the listeners? Why does the course of the mill stream widen? Is it a horse? Hark to the sound of the hoofs, they say, that gallops so wildly Williamsburg way. God, what was that like a human shriek from the winding valley? Will nobody speak? Will nobody answer those women who cry as the awful warnings thunder by? Whence come they? Listen, and now they hear the sound of the galloping horse hoofs near. They watch the trend of the vale and see the rider who thunders so menacingly with waving arms and warning scream to the home-filled banks of the valley stream. He draws no rein, but he shakes the street with a shout and the ring of the galloping feet, and this the cry that he flings to the wind, to the hills for your lives, the flood is behind. He cries and is gone, for they know the worst. The treacherous Williamsburg Dam has burst. The basin that nourished their happy homes is changed to a demon. It combs, a monster in aspect with shaggy front of of shattered dwellings to take the brunt of the dwellings they shatter, white maned and hoarse. This kind of horse. The merciless terror fills the course of the narrow valley and rushing raves with death on the first of its hissing waves, till cottage and street and crowded mill are crumbled and crushed. But onward still, in front of the roaring flood is heard the galloping horse and the warning word. Thank God that the brave man's life is spared. From Williamsburg town he nobly dared to race with the flood and to take the road. In front of the terrible swath it mowed. For miles it thundered and crushed behind, but he looked ahead with steadfast mind. They must be warned, was all he said, as away on his terrible ride he sped. When heroes are called for, bring the crown to this Yankee rider, send him down on the stream of time with the courteous old. His deed, as the Romans, was brave and bold, and the tale can as noble a thrill awake, for he offered his life for the people's sake. So this is heroic compassion. Let's see, did he survive? It tells the tale. Who risked what they risked free from strife, and its promise of glorious pay, his life. And the man's life was spared, it sounded like. I don't remember. I believe it was okay, and I think he survived. He cries, is gone, but they know the worst. Thank God that the brave man's life is spared. From Williamsburg town he nobly dared to race with the flood and to take the road in front of the terrible swath it mowed. So he was a hero and he did live. That's wonderful. I have one more. Uh, it's a little darker than that one. No, I think we'll just stay with this one because he offered his life for the people's sake. He offered, but his life was spared. Thank goodness. His name again is Collins Graves. The Ride of Collins Graves. Collins Graves. Graves is his last name. Shall I read it again? I almost want to, but I think we can also go back and hear it on the tape here. So here we are, and I thank you for coming. My voice again is hoarse, like I said in this book. It said horse, Hoarse. It sounded like the animal, but that he was riding, but in the context at the time, it was the voice that was hoarse. So he yelled really loudly. Thank goodness that he did, because he saved so many people. 200 people perished in the disaster. Rode through the towns to warn residents. And it also says he drew no rein, which means he rode bareback, it sounded like. So that's a real hero. That's a real hero. And this part of the book is a section on compassion. So that is real compassion, to show compassion for your fellow man is to try to warn him and wake up. Now he apparently had a sixth sense, because they say here that that he the valley is peaceful still, and the leaves are afire on top of the hill. It was not a sound nor a thing of sense, but a pain, like a pang, in the short suspense that wraps the being of those who see at their feet the gulf of eternity. He knew without seeing it. That's how come he survived, because you could not have outrun a flood unless you had a sixth sense. It was a sixth sense, but says there's not a sound nor a thing of sense. That they mean the six senses. Five senses. They mean those five senses. It's not a thing of sense. They mean in the poem that it wasn't something he could see, smell, hear, or feel. See, smell, hear, feel, or see, smell, hear, feel, or taste. He couldn't sense it that way, but he sensed it a different way. But a pain, like a pang in the short suspense that wraps the being of those who see at their feet the gulf of eternity. So thank goodness that he did that. So there you are. Listeners can look it up, because I think he's in your part of the world. The Mill River in Hampshire County, Massachusetts. This was May 16th, 1874. So we'll read that part again. Nearly 200 people from the villages of Williamsburg, Skinnerville, Haydenville, and Leeds perished in the disaster. Okay, so here we are. I'm glad you came. Thank you. It was great to see you. And good morning to people on coming back later. John Clark, and I always forget everybody except John Clark. But thank you for coming. Okay, old Kinderhook.